G-Man Boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every single live he donates. I see him on other lives donating. He's got the bag on it.
Alright people, I'm trying something a little bit different. We're going to call this midweek report. Bit like review of the week, only it's going to be shorter. And for the simple reason, there's been a few stories come out and I just haven't had much of a chance to make, in-depth videos on them. So what I figure I'll do is I'll just do this little kind of, snippet of what's going on in the world of boxing as it is now, whilst having a nice little glass of Lucozade in a wine glass. Yeah. Ade has whiskey, Ty Boot has Echo Falls. You boys got a lot less subscribers than them. I drink Lucozade in a wine glass, go figure. But we'll get into this. So we'll talk about the fights on this weekend. The main one that I'm interested in is Vasyl Lomachenko versus Richard Commey. I'm interested in that fight. Richard Commey, a couple of years ago, prior to the Teofimo Lopez fight, a lot of people were really high on him. Now, I myself will admit I thought that he would have a great chance of beating Teofimo Lopez because I'd always see, because Commey even had, although he had 2 losses to Robert Easter, and he had a loss, I think it was Dennis Gradchek or something, the guy he beat, Herring. They were close fights, they were competitive fights. So I kind of thought, okay, Commey can punch. He's a decent fighter. He'll give Teofimo Lopez some issues. He didn't. He got walked onto a counter, got taken out in 2 rounds. But he came back there, I think it was the start of this year. And I kind of thought, okay, Commey can still be useful. Now, he's in there against Lomachenko. Now, I got to be frank. I thought the Nakatani fight would really tell us a lot about Lomachenko, where he is. I genuinely did think he might not have as easy a time as he did in the Nakatani fight. I thought maybe the best of Lomachenko, if it was still around, it would be around at 130 pounds, if you get me. That maybe lightweight was a weight too far, but he looked very good in the Nakatani fight. He really did, and he done a better job on Nakatani, much better job than Teofimo Lopez did. Now again, this is a common opponent, and he's following the trend that Teofimo did, because obviously in 2019, July of 2019, he fought Nakatani, and then it was December of 2019 that he fought Richard Commey. Now, I'd be very surprised, let's just say that, right, if Lomachenko blasts Richard Commey out in a couple of rounds. I'd be very surprised. Lomachenko isn't really that type of a puncher. And the only time he ever really has blasted people out was when they've been, severely overmatched, like Anthony Crawler, like that fight. So I would imagine that this is going to be a longer fight than it was for Teofimo Lopez. But I would imagine that Lomachenko should win this fight, should win it straightforward. I reckon this fight might go similar to the Walters fight, although I expect Commey to show a lot more heart than Nicholas Walters did. But ultimately, I expect Lomachenko to break him down slowly, systematically, with movement and just accurate punches, using his legs to get in and out, and to just break Richard Commey down. And either stop him, as in, with headshots, referee forces a stoppage, or, as we've seen with several Lomachenko opponents, to just, corner stop the fight, kind of late-ish rounds, probably kind of rounds 8 to 10, in around that. But I'm looking forward to seeing it. I wonder, I was watching Jamie from Punch Perfect Boxing, I was watching his prediction video, and he feels as though there's a very good chance that the WBO, who've been very close with Lomachenko throughout his career, really, I think both titles he won at 130 and 126 pounds were WBO titles. He feels that they might make him mandatory after this fight for Kambosos. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if they did, to be honest with you, because the WBO and Bob Arum seem to have a very close relationship. It's similar to Frank Warren. A lot of the times, Manny Pacquiao would often fight for WBO when he was with Bob Arum. So that wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if the WBO did do that. Now, also Bob Arum, funny enough, he's been talking about the possibility of Shakur Stevenson versus Vasyl Lomachenko. Now, that's an interesting fight. That fight is a pure boxing match. Both guys can box very well. Shakur Stevenson, he is just getting better and better, because I think that he's starting to fill out a little bit more as a fighter. That's why he's expected, he's probably going to grow into lightweight fairly quickly, because when he turned pro at featherweight, he looked like a boy. Even though I think he was 21, 22, he didn't look like he developed any real man strength. It seems to be coming about now, and that's why I expect him to go through the weights. I would say he'll probably finish his career at 140, 147. Honestly, I think he could. Maybe not 140. Maybe that's a bridge too far, but 140 definitely. I wouldn't be surprised if he's fighting at that weight at some stage. So, yeah, him having that fight at 130 or 120 or 135 would be good. I like the fight. If you're Lomachenko, unless you're making an absolute rake of cash, it's a risky fight because you're talking about Lomachenko is how would I describe it? Lomachenko is the veteran, in that scenario where it's like almost a pass of the torch, if that makes sense. Although Lomachenko was not gone, not in the slightest, but maybe Bob Arum is looking at it as a case of remember when Manny Pacquiao was his fighter, and he was trying to push Terence Crawford back in the day. He was always trying to get Pacquiao Crawford, maybe kind of like that, where it's like, you're a great fighter, no one's taking that away from you. But I want to see if the new young charge can go in there and can take over the kingdom almost. So it would be a fight for boxing purists. Make no mistake about it. But it'd be a great. I would enjoy it personally. I certainly would. In terms of other news, we have the Dazn card on this weekend, and I read this on Twitter, and I wasn't actually sure who they were, but Chris Andre explained very well in his video on this that they are essentially part of Eurosport. Now, Eurosport have always put on. It's free to air as far as I'm aware in the UK. Now, someone want to correct me on that, but it's not terrestrial. I don't think. I don't know if it is terrestrial or not, but I've never had to pay for it on Sky, and I've had Sky since over 20 years, and I never had to pay for that. That was never one that I had to pay for. So I don't know if it's free on all platforms in the UK or if it's just on Sky, but Eurosport, they always kind of done obscure kind of sports, the best way to describe it. Like, for example, they'd be putting on like the under-17s football games, the under-17s, FIFA World Cup, stuff like that, kind of real obscure sports. They put on the Queensberry League, which was kind of like an amateur. It was kind of like a semi-pro, kind of unlicensed kind of thing. Apparently Anthony Yard had a few fights in there. I never knew that. So they do kind of things like that. At one stage, they were putting Klitschko fights on, believe it or not. They had Pulev versus Klitschko on Eurosport. They had Klitschko Leopai on Eurosport. They had a few of Klitschko's fights on there. But they're in talk over taking over BT. Serious talks. Now remember, there was talk of BT Sports going up, and DAZN, I think it was a buyout or something like that. So that would have meant then Premier League football on DAZN. Now, Chris was saying this in his video, and I agree. If we want pay-per-view to end, now, although DAZN have hinted that they will be looking to do certain pay-per-views, again, I hope that's just hearsay. I'd obviously like it if they didn't. But if they do want pay-per-views to end, a lot of that depends on DAZN getting Premier League football. Because that would mean the subscription would definitely go up. There's no ifs or buts. It would definitely go up, the subscription, if they got Premier League football. They would no way be able to, like they do, where they make a bomb. If they kept it at €7, or was it $7.99 a month, but they definitely increased the price 100%. But if they got like the BT Sports subscription package, and it was on a Premier League package anyway in Champions League, and it was a decent price, subscriptions would go through the roof. It really would. And the boxing would piggyback off that, because obviously you'd have your football, United, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool, Everton, etc. You'd have them playing, ads for, Conor Benn, Katie Taylor, Dylan Whyte, which would help the boxing shows, a bit like what was happening with Sky. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. Frank Warren at BT Sport, that's really kind of, I think that's on its last legs at this stage. BT Sport and Frank Warren, I remember back in 2017 when that whole deal started. And all I can think back to is that round table. Billy Joe Saunders, Carl Frampton, Josh Warrington, I think Anthony Yard was there, Tyson Fury, someone else as well. Good names. And how many of them are left? Yard is, and Fury is co-promoted by Top Rank and Frank Warren. So realistically, the only one who's really there still is Anthony Yard. It's crazy when you think about it. How, and that when BT Sport and Frank Warren started, those shows weren't horrible. They weren't amazing, but they were sure as hell better than the shows putting on now. Much better. So obviously we have the DAZN card this weekend as well. Conor Benn is fighting against Chris Algieri. Obviously we were meant to have that Sky show, but I completely forgot actually that we have the Probellum card on, which is in Dubai. think it's in Dubai, which is going to have Sonny Edwards and John Real Casimiro on it. I'm looking forward to seeing the Probella show, I have to say, I really am. Now, I'm not... That Casimiro-Paul Butler fight... Paul Butler's not been looking good for years now. That's going to be... That's going to be over quick. Believe you me, that's going to be over quick, that fight. But it looks like a decent card. Probellum is interesting. I want to see how they go. They're doing some show. I think they have another show on the 18th. Forget who's on that. But because it'll be interesting to see Probellum in the new year and see kind of how they go about it. But yeah, Sonny Edwards on main event, and big up to Sonny Edwards. Real cool kid. Real cool kid. Stand-up guy. So we have that. Kind of some other news that's been out. Tony Yoka. Do you remember he was meant to fight Carlos Takam in the new year? Apparently that's not happening. There was an article in French. Do you really think I could speak French? No. But I translated it, and it basically said the fight's off. Apparently Takam's injured, according to the translator. And you go on BoxRec, it's gone. There's rumours going around that Bacoli may step in. Martin Bacoli. And that'd be interesting. I was actually kind of looking forward to Takam versus Yoka. Yeah, Takam was stopped in his last fight against Joe Joyce, but he did look good in parts against Joe Joyce. And I tell you, he'd done a much better job on Jerry Forrest than Michael Hunter did. Much better. He looked actually very good in the Jerry Forrest fight, I have to say, Carlos Takam. That was July of last year. He stepped in for Big Farmer. Do you remember Big Farmer, Jarrell Miller, when he failed another test? So he was meant to fight Jerry Forrest, and then they put Carlos Takam in. So yeah, I was looking forward to that now, I have to say, because Takam is tough. He's normally quite durable, and he was really upset when that fight got stopped against Joe Joyce. Really upset. Because Takam's a tough guy, and I feel for Takam in a bit, because when he's been in the UK, apart from the Chisora fight, that was a legit stoppage. But the AJ stoppage was... The AJ stoppage was premature. And the Joyce fight, yeah, that was a bit premature too. But the AJ stoppage was really poor. That was a really poor stoppage. It was Phil Edwards, I think, who stopped that fight. And that was a real poor stoppage. Real poor. So, Bacoli potentially could be going in there against Yoka. I like that fight too. Martin Bacoli is a good fighter. He's been doing his thing. I think him against Yoka will be actually quite an entertaining fight. Had the press conference, Josh Taylor, Jack Catterall. It's February 26th in Scotland. Big up to Josh Taylor as well. I love watching Josh Taylor fight. Him against Catterall might be... It was meant to happen on the 18th, didn't happen. Got pushed back. I think Josh Taylor had an injury, I think it was. So that fight, we had the press conference this week. That's going to be a good little scrap. Alright, I think Jack Catterall's going to give a lot more than people think of him. But I expect Josh Taylor to win the fight, don't get me wrong. But I definitely think people are looking at Jack Catterall and kind of a bit dismissive of him. I think he'll give... Well, the more I look at Jack Catterall, the more I see of him. I think he will be able to give Josh Taylor something to think about, certainly in the fight. Obviously, in other news, we've obviously had the announcement that Dillian Whyte, Tyson Fury, that is looking likely that is going to happen next. If nothing happens with Undisputed or anything like that, looks like we're going to get that fight next. That's an interesting scrap. I was thinking about that when I done that video yesterday. I was just thinking after, and I was like, that is a really good fight if it happens. And if what Dillian Whyte is saying, and the more I think about it, because Dillian Whyte is someone, when he said about Tyson Fury needing to change his style because he can't fight the way he used to, the more I thought about it, the more I kind of looked at it, the more I think he's onto something. Because Dillian Whyte, people would say, Dillian Whyte's just a loudmouth, but he is a boxing purist. He knows boxing. He knows boxing very well. And I suspect he's onto something when he says that. Because you could see it in Fury, even in the first Wilder fight. And yes, I'll admit, that was not a Fury close to his best. He was only 6 months, if even, back from the comeback trail. So he wasn't going to look as good. He wasn't going to look as sharp as he did a couple of years prior. But I don't think he's ever really been able to capture that same kind of form, in a sense of just from that style, where he was moving around the ring, flicking a jab, good legs, coming into the 240s, low 250s, and having energy. I think that's what John Fury was saying, that even if he can come in the low 250s, how much energy does he have? Not much. So I think Dillian Whyte is onto something when he says that. And I think having a Fury who's a bit more stationary would play into Dillian Whyte's strengths. But having said that, I still see Tyson Fury being a bit too much for Dillian Whyte. I could be wrong. I've seen a few people pick Dillian Whyte in the comment section of that video. So there's that. Apparently Tank Davis is vacated, and I'm just going off memory here. I don't have the phone near me, but Tank Davis apparently vacated the WBA 140-pound title. This comes into actually I completely forgot. Actually slipped my mind, because when I did review of the week, I done that on a Sunday night before Tank Davis had fought Isaac Cruz, and I didn't actually say, I didn't watch it live, but I completely forgot. I didn't talk about that fight. Isaac Cruz, Tank Davis. It's good I mentioned that. I have to say, right, I think had it been Rowley in there, Tank Davis would have had an easier time, because stylistically Rowley would suit Tank Davis a lot more, just because he wouldn't be too hard to hit. It was close. Some people are saying it was a robbery. It was definitely close. Me personally, Tank Davis 115, 113, I'm okay with that. He definitely, it's probably one of the worst. How do I say it? I don't say one of the worst, but it definitely wasn't the Tank Davis I was expecting. I think that's the best way to describe it. Tank Davis as a person outside of the ring has done a lot of silly things, but as a fighter, I really enjoy watching him. And he just didn't look. It was just strange in there seeing him, to be honest with you, just moving, and it was definitely a competitive fight. And Isaac Cruz is definitely he's a good fighter. He's a good fighter. I think he's going to cause trouble at 135. I'm not going to say he's going to beat everybody, but I think he's going to give more than a fair share of the guys in there a problem. Mark my words on that. It's a good little fighter, Isaac Cruz. As for Tank Davis, it'd be interesting to see what he does next. I'd still like to see him and Devin. I'd still like to see him versus Haney. I don't know why, just something about that fight just appeals to me. I don't know what it is. And obviously, last thing we'll talk about, Tommy Fury, Jake Paul. No mas, no more. It's going to be Tyron Woodley against Jake Paul in a rematch. I was looking forward to that fight. I was. It's different. It's grown on me, kind of, this whole. At the end of the day, right, I like it when I go, sometimes when I see my friends who are casuals and they're talking about Mike Tyson coming back and he could be heavyweight champion again, that's a bit silly, and I just am like, no, don't even want to get into that conversation. But the fact that they're talking about Jake Paul, Tommy Fury, but they're mentioning other boxers now, and they are starting to kind of get into it a bit more based off of watching Jake Paul. I think to myself, you know what, if it is getting more people interested in boxing, and if it is getting more people talking about it, and making an effort to make an understanding of it, not just turning around and saying, Jake Paul's going to be world champion, he could be Usyk, Jake Paul. No, they're not doing it. They're actually looking at these fighters and saying, actually I'm enjoying this. If we get more of that, then you have to say it's a good thing. Because what do we want? Do we want boxing to be just the hardcore fans? Because these fighters are never going to get paid. It's just the hardcore fans. It's the hardcore fans who go to the small hall shows, who literally do help pay for the fighters on them small hall shows, because them selling tickets is how they get paid. But when you look at these fighters in arenas, 90% of those fans are casuals. And if we can get more fans involved in the sport of boxing, and if this helps, then I think that's... Boxing, given what happened in 2020, is going to be with amateur gyms, especially in the UK. It's going to... It won't be now we feel it. It'll probably be in the next few years. But if we can get guys like Tommy Fury and Jake Paul to get more people involved in boxing, to actually go to amateur gyms, and maybe you never know what you might find. You never know. So I'm a bit disappointed. I'd like it if they could reschedule it, because the press conference won me over. Seeing John Fury on his little rant against Jake Paul, that would have been fun. Seeing a few people, seeing Hatman say as well that he feels the occasion might get to Tommy Fury, and the Team Fury are saying maybe we need to get him a bit more experience. Potentially, certainly that could be the case. And believe you me, it would be, where was it going to be? Florida. So you'd have a full attendance. It would be probably a big shock to the system. And Tommy Fury hasn't looked amazing as a pro, and that's kind of probably when he's in an environment that he feels comfy. And if you take him out of his comfort zone and put him in an environment where he might not feel comfy, that could be asking for trouble. You know, it really could. So that's kind of pretty much it. I don't want to go too long on this. We saved that for Sundays and review of the week. So yeah, that's kind of the boxing news that's been over the last few days. Let me know if you enjoyed these. I don't know, will I keep doing a midweek report? Because I do review of the week and that's fun. And that kind of takes up most of the Sunday anyway. But you never know. Like, it's just the fact that I've been busy the last few days and haven't had a chance to talk about individuals. So, like, I was hoping to do a preview for Loma versus Commey last night, didn't get around to it. So I said I'd try this and see how it goes. Let me know what you think of this. Leave your thoughts in the comment section. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you could, please, lads and lassies, helps your boy out. Smash the like button. We're at like 8, 9, or 5. I wish it was at 9,000. 5,895 subs at the time of recording. 105 people. That's it. That's all I need to get to 6k. I really want to. If you could, share the video, do whatever you can do to get a few people subscribing. Help your boy out. Help him get to 6k. For now, lads and lassies, I'll talk to you. Peace.